All of the simple schedules of reinforcement have a time and a place that they should be utilized. VR, in my personal experience, is what practitioners try to use the most. The problem I've seen with VR schedules is that they're not true VR schedules. I've had someone describe to me, well, I reinforce the 7th to the 14th response, with the average being this. So that means response number 1 through 6 have never been consequated with reinforcement, and you're going to get a post-reinforcement pause. People will then say, this is a VR 12, 13, whatever, 7, 10, 11, whatever the math is. People say, this is a VR 11. No, really, it's an FR 7 to 14, with it varying between 7 to 14. The whole reason to use a variable schedule of reinforcement is to eliminate the post-reinforcement pauses, maximizing session time, maximizing responses. If you don't have back-to-back reinforcement, then it is going to result in a post-reinforcement pause, and you might as well just be in control of it. If it's too difficult to implement a variable schedule of reinforcement, just use the fixed schedule of reinforcement and be aware that there's going to be post-reinforcement pauses. Let's say you reinforce every 10th correct math problem. Just know, after reinforcement, math problem behavior is not going to happen, and that's okay. It's due to the nature of your reinforcement schedule and nothing else. It's not a lack of motivation. It's not anything that the student or the learner is doing. It's simply based on the schedule of reinforcement that you're using. Remember, the learner's always right. So when the learner is not doing something that you anticipated, that means you're not implementing what needs to be done to occasion the behavior you're looking for. So in the field, when I use a variable schedule of reinforcement, if I'm going to use an interval, I had an app, and you could set it the average time, and it would kind of vibrate in your pocket, and it'd either vibrate after 1 second, that was a minimum, or it would do the average, whatever number we have to do to get to the average. That app did not get updated, so I no longer have that app, and using variable intervals of schedules of reinforcement is not possible at my time. I do not have the technology, I do not have the tools to use a variable interval schedule of reinforcement. The ease of it is very easy, especially when you're having to train other individuals, such as caregivers, RBTs, other people, other BCBAs on your team, anyone that's not you. Because the ease of it is just the first correct, after this vibrates, the next correct response, provide reinforcement. Very easy. You're not tracking every single response. You don't have to be like, was that correct? Was that incorrect? Was that incorrect? Was that correct? Was that correct? Was that incorrect? No, you just wait. Bzz, bzz. Next correct one, Skittles. Bzz, bzz. Next correct one, Skittles. Very easy to implement. Fixed interval schedules of reinforcement, I would not use in the field unless there is a really compelling reason to use them. You don't want that post-reinforcement pause. It'd be much easier to implement. You can just set a timer. My phone's built-in timer has that ability where you can set a reoccurring 2-minute time interval. After 2 minutes, bzz, bzz, next response, reinforcement. After 2 minutes, bzz, bzz, next response, reinforcement. This is not going to result in a lot of math problems being completed. So probably wouldn't use it. Not saying there's not a time and place for it, just most likely wouldn't use it. Fixed ratio, very easy to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, reinforcement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, reinforcement. The problem there, it's a little more response effort on the practitioner's end. You have to, every single response that we're looking at, every math problem, was it correct? Yes or no? After 5 correct on an FR5, after that 5th one, you provide a reinforcement immediately following that response. So you have to be anticipating, you have to be able to judge in a moment whether that was right or that was wrong as far as the answer goes, and then consequate it with reinforcement as soon as you can, as soon as that behavior is finished. And that way you'll get that. And then just know post-reinforcement pause is going to follow, which is okay. It's in the nature of the schedule. A VR schedule, probably the most difficult to implement. Because not only is it random, do you have to randomly know when to respond, you have to track every single response in between reinforcement periods and then be able to come up with the random number of correct responses that equate in reinforcement. Time and time again, it is very difficult to train someone to respond. All right, we're doing an FR7. To respond, there's one response, reinforcement. One response, reinforcement. One response, reinforcement. I've had people, I'm not providing reinforcement after this one. That's the randomness of the schedule. There is no discriminating factors. There's no environmental cues that allows the learner to take advantage of the schedule. The only way to maximize reinforcement is to behave. So our learners will keep behaving if the schedule is implemented correctly. And eventually you can thin out the schedule, get to a VR20. But you still sometimes have to reinforce back-to-back responses. Humans are not very good at coming up with random numbers, random sequential orders. And how do you even know if it's going to equate to a VR7? Well, what I do is I use a randomizer app, downloaded one for free, and then I do the math and I'll write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. Come up with, that's VR. Oh, you add those up, divide them by that number. The mean is 3.75. And then I'll have a VR 3.75. I've had people come in like, don't you mean the VR 3 or VR 4? No, the math says it's a VR 3.75. Just making that number up, but I would come up with it, do the math. And I've actually went to an expel. I had philosophical doubt. Always should have philosophical doubt. So what I did is I took like 20 of those numbers. I had that lined up with the randomizer, and I hit randomize, number 1, write down number 1. Randomize, number 6, 6. Did that 20 times. I took the average, and it did come out to about the average I was looking for. The more trials that I put in there, the closer and closer to the average it'll be with the randomizer. So, and you're not looking at, if you just do 2 responses on a VR schedule, it's not really a VR schedule. You're not really going to get an average of anything. You just add those 2, divide it by 2, and that'd be your VR. But it's over time. If you stick with the VR schedule over time throughout multiple sessions, it'll average 7 responses. But sometimes you'll hit that randomizer. It'll say 1. The next response, the next correct response results in reinforcement. Hit the randomizer. 1. The next response results in reinforcement. 7. The 7th correct response results in reinforcement. And in that way, you don't have to pick the number. You keep doing it. I believe the White Book, at least the 2nd edition, if I remember correctly, they suggested getting like note cards and writing them all on note cards, and then you shuffle them. And if you went through every note card, it's going to average, it's going to be a VR 6. And then so you take the note cards, you've done all note cards, you then shuffle them again. Implement it again, and it's going to be random ordering. You just write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the amount is. The biggest problem, you gotta have number 1 in there, you gotta have number 2 in there, you gotta have number 3 in there. I don't know if it's in the book, but I would love to know. Will we have post-reinforcement pauses? Maybe this is a thesis idea. What about if we only reinforce the first, second, third responses, and then started at 10 again? So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 have never consequated with reinforcement. And then everything else, put it on a traditional VR schedule. Will we see, following reinforcement, no post-reinforcement pause? But we'll see a post-reinforcement pause following the 3rd response, because the 4th to 9th response has never in the past been consequated with reinforcement? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know from the current literature, the current research, it's just got to be every single one. And in that way, if reinforcement could be available at any time from your learner's perspective, you're not going to get post-reinforcement pauses, because that is not how to maximize reinforcement while minimizing response effort. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it made sense. If you got questions, comments, additional feedback, you want something else explained, if that didn't really make sense to you, let me know. Please just comment, like, hit all the buttons. You can email me at behavioralcomedy@gmail.com. And stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.